welcome to our podcast series on synthetic biology.
We're the City of London iGEM team of 2024, and our goal here is to release weekly podcasts you can listen to anywhere at any time.
Today brings our 5th episode on macromolecules, so let's dive right in.
To start with, let's break down this big word, macromolecules.
Macro is a prefix that originates from Greek and means large or big. In the context of macromolecules, it refers to large molecules composed of smaller subunits called monomers.
And obviously the term molecule refers to a group of atoms held together by chemical bonds.
I love Greek root words, they just make everything so much more interesting.
I agree. Now let's talk about the first macromolecule, proteins.
Proteins are polymers made up of amino acids linked together by peptide bonds. They have a wide range of functions in the body, including structural support, enzymatic activity, and transportation of molecules.
Care to give us 2 or 3 examples?
Hemoglobin's a good example. It's the protein found in red blood cells that plays a crucial role in transporting oxygen from our lungs to tissues throughout the body and carrying carbon dioxide back to the lungs for exhalation.
Ooh, now that reminds me, last week we talked about respiration, breathing, and muscle cells in quite a bit of detail, so if you missed that, be sure to check it out.
Really cool example is collagen. Some of you might be familiar with this protein, especially if you're into skincare. It provides strength, structure, and elasticity to tissues, such as skin, bones, tendons, and cartilage.
That's very cool, but what about proteins found in non-mammalian species?
Have you heard of silk proteins before?
I'm familiar with them. Is it silkworms that produce silk proteins?
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. Silk proteins are a class of fibrous proteins produced by various arthropods, including spiders and silkworms. These proteins are primarily used by these organisms to spin silk threads for purposes such as building webs, creating cocoons, or constructing shelters.
Spiders, in particular, produce silk proteins that exhibit remarkable strength, elasticity, and flexibility. These properties make spider silk one of the strongest natural materials known, with potential applications in various industries such as textiles, medicine, and engineering.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wait, quick question. Are all proteins round and spherical as I imagined them to be?
Well, not exactly. There are actually 2 main types of proteins, fibrous and globular. Globular proteins are in fact the spherical molecules that you imagine, such as hemoglobin, which we talked about. Globular proteins are often enzymes.
Let me guess. Fibrous proteins are like fibers, so are they long, quite thick, and in bundles?
Exactly, yeah. They serve structural functions because they're so long and strong. For example, your hair and nails are made of a substance called keratin. Keratin is a great example of a fibrous protein.
Wow, this is fascinating. I never knew there was a difference.
Okay, so enough about proteins. Let's talk about carbohydrates. What are they?
Carbohydrates are molecules made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They serve as a primary source of energy for organisms and also play roles in cell structure and recognition.
There are 3 types, monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. And let's take a look at these prefixes to break down those long words. Mono refers to one, di refers to 2, and poly refers to many.
I've also heard of oligosaccharides. What are they?
Yes, they're quite odd. We can't forget about those. So basically, the distinction between oligo and poly isn't quantitative, but oligo means few and poly means many.
So monosaccharides are the simplest form of carbohydrates, consisting of only one sugar molecule.
So can you give me a few examples?
So common monosaccharides include glucose, fructose, and galactose. These molecules are the building blocks for more complex carbohydrates.
Right, stuff in fruit, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So disaccharides, that means 2. So when 2 monosaccharides are joined together through a condensation reaction, they form a glycosidic bond.
Examples of disaccharides include sucrose, which is table sugar, lactose, which is milk sugar, and maltose, which is found in malt beverages.
And wait, I actually know what polysaccharides are. They're complex carbohydrates composed of long chains of monosaccharide units. Although I actually can't quite remember what they do.
They have a quite handy use because they serve as energy storage molecules. So you can imagine stuff like starch in plants and glycogen in animals, which we briefly talked about. But also they can serve structural components like cellulose in plant cell walls and chitin in the exoskeleton of arthropods.
Thanks, I didn't know that.
So, moving on to our third macromolecule. What are lipids?
Lipids are very interesting. They are diverse molecules that are insoluble in water but soluble in nonpolar solvents. Lipids include fats, oils, phospholipids, and steroids, and they serve as energy storage molecules, structural components of cell membranes, and hormones. So you can see how they're very handy in a lot of different things.
And in case you were wondering, fats are the most common type of lipid and are composed of glycerol molecules linked to 3 fatty acid chains, and they serve as a concentrated source of energy, insulation, and cushioning for organs. And common dietary fats include butter, olive oil, and coconut oil.
So I know that some people believe fats are really bad for cardiovascular health, but then again, some people online are saying that we need fats. So who do I believe?
Tend to raise levels of LDL, which is an acronym standing for low density lipoprotein. In other words, the bad cholesterol, the stuff you don't want. This can increase your risk of heart disease and stroke by clogging up your arteries. However, unsaturated fats, on the other hand, can help lower LDL cholesterol, so they're considered the good cholesterol.
Now, this is some really complex human biology, and we don't have time to do it justice. So remember, the key to a healthy diet is moderation and balance.
So moving swiftly on, we have our last macromolecule, and that is nucleic acids, and these are polymers made up of nucleotides.
Wait, hold up. What are nucleotides?
They're molecules consisting of a sugar molecule, a phosphate group, and a nitrogenous base. The two main types of nucleic acids are DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA, which is ribonucleic acid. This genetic information is essential for protein synthesis and cellular function.
Did you guys know that nitrogenous bases have complementary pairs? So this means that adenosine pairs with thymine and cytosine pairs with guanine.
But don't forget that this pairing only happens to DNA, nucleotides with deoxyribose as its sugar. RNA, on the other hand, actually doesn't have thymine. Instead, adenosine pairs with uracil, another nitrogenous base. We'll be talking about complementary base pairs in a later episode where we take a closer look at protein synthesis.
That's super exciting, and I can hardly wait. That's all we have for you today, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know, and we'd also love to hear your thoughts on what caught your attention.
Don't forget to check out our Instagram and TikTok pages at igem_Cole.
Thank you so much for tuning in another week, and remember to join us again for next week where we'll be looking at enzymes.